Organissima, New York. Your exotic skin, hair, and beauty source, and your one-stop shop for all your natural and organic skin and hair care, featuring authentic organic Moroccan oil and prickly pear seed oil and much more. Bringing you only the best, straight from the source and proudly produced in the USA. So what are you waiting for? Shop today at www.organissima.com. Organissima, New York. Your beauty is our duty.
Hey, everybody. It's Cheryl Bryant Bruce, MD. You know me, the celebrity doc, and I am here with my show host, my co-host, Hisham Elamati, Hurricane H. And you are here on Chatters That Matter. Let's talk about it. This is our runaway talk show that's here to educate, inform, and entertain you. And tonight we have two guests. Our first guest is a person that is near and dear to me, in whom I entrust my very life, Dr. Tuscano from UC Davis Medical Center, oncologist extraordinaire, and a man with a very big brain. So, Dr. Tuscano, if you can introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background, and then you have some exciting news about some exciting new developments in the world of cancer.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. This is a great forum and show. Just about myself, I'm a medical oncologist, and I was actually born and raised in California and trained mostly at the National Institutes of Health as an immunologist and an oncologist there, and under the tutelage of actually Anthony Fauci. He was my mentor.
Really?
Yeah, and then came back here and joined the faculty about 24 or 25 years ago. And ever since joining the faculty here at UC Davis, I've focused on blood cancers, and that's leukemia, lymphoma, and multiple myeloma, and stem cell transplantation. And so that's what I do. And currently, I run that department here at the university. Do a lot of patient care, and I do a lot of teaching and research. And the research really involves developing new therapies and then trying them in patients with cancer, many of those patients who have failed all the standard treatment approaches. So a lot of different hats here at the university, but I do enjoy it, and it is very fulfilling.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
So what made you get into oncology? Was there some life experience that did you have an experience with cancer, or just an interest in the research? What made you do this?
That's a really good question. I know my other family members and mentors when I was younger said, why would you want to go into oncology? It's a very depressing field, especially when I went into it.
Right.
And really because of the need. There was a huge need for new, better, and less toxic treatments. And so I just felt the need. And my wife calls it a calling. But I just, if I was going to do research and dedicate my life to an area, I wanted to be in an area where there was a lot of need. So that really motivated me.
Excellent. And I mean, there really is such need, and it's a growing need, because I don't know if it's just our perception, but I do really believe that the numbers are dramatically increasing. And I mean, our world is changing. It's very toxic. And so there are a lot of reasons for cancer to be increasing, but at the same time, we're increasing in the therapies that we have available to manage it.
Right. Yeah. So it is increasing, and it's because we're an aging population. And it is mostly
who's aging? Not me.
Good one. And so it is a disease of older individuals, although I do treat a lot of young people as well.
Mhm.
And that increases our risk as we age for developing cancer. And then some of the exposures as well are contribute to the development of cancer as well. So there is more of it, and we're converting cancer into a chronic disease. So patients are living longer with it. So there is a huge need for newer treatments and less toxic treatments. I think cancer therapy's kind of gotten a bad rap in that it just makes you sick, and it's really changed a lot in the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I was growing up, I didn't know very many people who had cancer. It was something that was almost unheard of. But if someone got a cancer diagnosis, that was it. That was all. And they were going to die. And oftentimes fairly soon. And now you have people that are living 10, 20, 30 years that are dying of things other than their cancer, like namely old age.
Right. Yes, absolutely. And I have so many patients in my clinic, and it's really it's actually difficult to change that mindset, because a lot of people think, I have cancer, I don't want to get chemotherapy, it's just going to make me sick, but now we have these new amazing targeted therapies and immunotherapies and cellular therapies that are much less toxic, that are curing people and keeping them alive. It's really remarkable what's happening in that world, and it's overflowing into other areas of medicine as well. We call it now. There's a whole new field of precision medicine that's blossoming. So it's a very exciting time. I kind of wish I was, a youngster just getting into the field to see where it's going to go. But I feel privileged to be in this field right now, just because there are so many exciting changes in what we can offer to patients that have this terrible disease.
Now let's talk about immunotherapy.
Okay.
The reason I want to talk about that is because people often ask me what it is. And our other guest, our celebrity guest, was J. Anthony Brown, and he is not going to be able to join us tonight. So we'll have to reschedule him. And J. Anthony does have leukemia, as do I. For those of you who do not know, I am fighting the good fight and winning against leukemia. And one of the questions people will frequently ask me is, are you doing chemotherapy? And I mean, I've done kind of a different course, because I tend to be very holistic. And so I've done a lot of holistic stuff, and I've had a lot of practitioners who have supported me in doing that. But at the same time, I did recognize the need for more traditional treatment as well. And I opted against the traditional chemotherapies in lieu of going the different route and taking the immunotherapy. And people were like, well, what does that mean? Because I had infusions initially, so medication was being put into my veins, and then I was on pills, and now I'm not on anything. But people did not understand why immunotherapy wasn't chemotherapy. And so, trying to explain to them that indeed it is a form of chemotherapy in a sense. It is a medication, but it isn't chemical therapy per se.
Yeah, so it is really an important concept to understand. And this is the way I usually explain it to my patients, is that our immune system is built to protect us, not only from infections, but also from cancer. And in fact, most of us are developing cancer since we were children in our bodies. And our immune system, through a process that's called immune surveillance, these cells in our body that are designed to seek out and destroy cancer in the very early stages. And that's happening all of our life. And so why do we develop cancer eventually? Is number one is our immune system eventually fails. And the cancer gets smarter by acquiring genetic abnormalities, probably through exposures to toxins that some of us are exposed to, and genetics and other factors, maybe infections that we don't understand. So the cancer gets smarter, our immune system gets weaker. And so finally, it reaches a point where the immune system is weak, the cancer can overcome that immune system, and the cancer takes hold and develops. And so how do we fix that? Is that there's many different ways. And one of the ways is through immunotherapy. So the immunotherapy can be a form of treatment that enhances your own immune system by using proteins and other molecules that will stimulate your immune system or redirect your immune system to the cancer. Or the cancer sometimes finds a way to shield itself, to try to tell the immune system that, hey, I'm not foreign, I belong here. And so if we can really expose that imposter, and we do that by exposing the markers on the surface that tell the immune system, I'm not supposed to be here. So there's, again, either augmenting the immune system, stimulating it, redirecting it, kind of awakening the immune system. We can give the patient a new immune system from a donor, and that's called an allogeneic transplant. And then now the latest development is taking the immune system out of the body and re-engineering it genetically, and then putting it back. And that's called cellular therapy, and that's FDA approved, and we do it on patients with leukemia and lymphoma, and it's looking like it's going to be curative. So many exciting developments right now. And this is spilling over, all this new technology, to many diseases, not just in many forms of cancer as well. So it's really an exciting time to be alive and to be practicing medicine and helping these patients.
Now, here's a question, because as we think about these things, we also have to think about the ethical implications of them. So, I mean, none of us want to die early. We can help it, and we want longevity. And not only do we want longevity, but we want to live good quality lives. These treatments are expensive. So they're going to put a drain on society, and a society that, as you said earlier, is aging. So the wage earning society, the younger part, I look at it as a mushroom. You know, we've got a big cap of boomers and beyond, and then a little tiny stem of younger wage earners. So does there become an ethical question when we're prolonging the lives of these older people that are getting these cancers, when they may not be taxpayers anymore, really, not wage earners?
Right. That is such an interesting topic. We could probably spend an entire hour on that one. And I'll just touch on it because, like I said, I wish I had more time. But I just read an interesting article about Japan. And in Japan, what's happening is that the birth rate has gone way down to one per couple. So their population is shrinking, especially the younger population. So now they're worried that there are not enough wage earners, not enough workers to support the older population in retirement. Right. And I think the same thing's going to be happening here as well. So it's really an interesting topic. And we have more and more aging population that are going to get cancer. The treatments are getting more expensive. So yeah, where do you draw the line? And we were touching on that earlier. This new cellular therapy where you re-engineer your immune system, it can cure you, but it's about $1 million minimum. So, and it's FDA approved, so the insurance company's obligated to pay for it. Who's paying those premium? It's really all of us. So, and all the people that are working. So yeah, I don't know. You'd think, you want to live forever, but can we? I mean, even if we had the magic pill, I mean, what would happen?
Well, the question for me becomes, we do all want to live forever, but as a primary care physician and as a wellness manager, I mean, what I do, my practice is based in nutrition and fitness, and it's lifestyle medicine, prevention and optimization. The problem that I run into is people don't really want a quick fix. They want a pill. And I think that most people are not willing to put in the work it takes to truly be healthy. So if we are extending the lives of people that are getting chronic diseases, sometimes by choices of their own, okay, so we cure their cancer, but they continue their lifestyle. What are we doing?
That is also a really interesting and important topic as well. We could spend another hour on that. Just because, should we put huge taxes on cigarettes or alcohol,
right?
Or or electric scooters, because nobody's going to be walking anymore pretty soon.
Right.
Or all the other things.
So it's like the movie Wall-E, where you had all of the big people that were big and their muscles and everything atrophied because everything was automated. They had the little automated cars. They did everything. So they just kind of turned into large blobs that couldn't function because they did nothing.
Yeah. Or a hamburger, I love hamburgers, it's true. It's so true. I mean, who should pay for the cost of bad behavior, right? Or behavior that is well known to limit our lifespan and to cause disease.
But that's a hard question, because then it's like, who died and left you boss?
Right. Who made you God? Yes.
Yep. Exactly.
Right. So, yeah, it's really, but it's interesting that a lot of people think, don't tread on me, but really, even if you're believing in the private sector, I mean, it's still socialized medicine because we're all paying insurance premiums.
Right.
And those insurance premiums are lower because
relative
there are
to the
people
cost.
that take care of themselves and don't use the health care. So they're really paying for the patients or the people that don't take care of themselves.
Right.
So it's really a socialization, whether it's private insurance, just you have a huge, expensive middleman, or whether it's a government covered, insurance policy as well. So many interesting topics here.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to unwrap, and it really does bring up more questions than answers, because we are gaining all of this new technology, we're gaining all of this new knowledge, and there does become the question of, what do we do with it? How do we use it? Who gets to control it and make the decisions as to who gets it? Because at the end of the day, we won't be able to afford to give it to everybody, especially as that mushroom stem shrinks and there are fewer and fewer taxpayers paying in to support the cost of all of this. And I mean, there are a lot of, quote, socialized medicine countries, because everyone's like, oh, we want socialized medicine, because they think that it's just this panacea where everything gets paid for. But there are a lot of countries that do have socialized medicine, and they have very specific endpoints where at a certain point they say, nope, you're not eligible for care. Nope, you can't have that particular treatment. And there's much crying and gnashing of teeth, but it's accepted as the norm in those countries because that's the way it is, and that's the way it's been understood. In this country, where we are spoiled, entitled, privileged, being told that we can't have something doesn't go over well.
No, it really doesn't. You're absolutely right. And where to draw the line is so challenging. I have a patient right now, 85 years old. She's pretty fit. She has leukemia, and and we're going nonstop to try and save her. And we're going to spend probably at least a couple $100,000 minimum, and we may or may not be able to pull her through. I mean, you can see all the ethical dilemmas that are created by that scenario. But again, who gets paid the least in our healthcare system? Pediatricians. And
there is the future.
Yes, they are our future. So it seems a little backwards to me, but
absolutely it does.
Yeah. So many interesting topics. I wish I had a little bit more time, because you really do bring up some really good topics to discuss and debate. And I love this kind of stuff too. I tend to be the optimist. I'm in here in the trenches. I want to cure as many people as I can, but is that always the right thing to do? I don't know. Go ahead.
I mean, there really is a component of it that has to belong to the person, because I remember when I was first diagnosed, I was a little bit irritated about it, because I was the one that the Comprehensive Cancer Center sent their patients to optimize their lifestyle. And I was walking my walk and doing the things that should have prevented me from getting the cancer. And then the leukemia I have, I'm, not the poster child for that leukemia. And it's like, well, everyone was like, well, how did that even happen? And I was looking around the cancer center the first day that I went in there, and I thought to myself, this is not going to be me. And I told my godmother, I'm looking around this cancer center, and I said, the majority of these people are going to lose their battles. And she said, well, how do you know that? I said, because I'm looking in their eyes and I see that they already gave up. It's the person who doesn't give up, who fights the good fight, that these treatments are going to benefit.
Right. Yeah, that's another really interesting and important topic, the will to live. And we have a little saying, we don't talk with patients directly, but we have this inner discussion about the will to live test. Did they pass the will to live test?
Yes.
So that's interesting. That's an interesting topic. The other one is that, so I focus in blood cancers, and most blood cancers strike indiscriminately. There's very little hereditary predisposition. There's very little known environmental exposures that lead to it. At least it's unknown for the most part.
For right now, yeah.
For right now. But anyway, very, very important and interesting topics. So you have a way of bringing out some really interesting. I can see why this show exists. You have a way of bringing out important and really controversial and just relevant topics.
Now here's a last question I'm going to toss at you as far as relevant topics, because we kind of don't know where cancer comes from. And I've always had a theory that cancer is actually a virus, that it's a living entity. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, there are some cancers that are caused by viruses, but and that's been well described and proven.
HPV.
HPV is one of them, and there's a virus that actually causes leukemia in Southeast Asia, not much in the United States. There's a bacteria that causes lymphoma in the stomach as well, H. pylori. But they're the vast minority, and also what's happening is now we have this big database called the TCGA, the Cancer Genome Atlas. So there's tens of thousands of patients where their entire genome is sequenced. And we can analyze that, and we are analyzing it. And there really isn't a lot of evidence that there are viral DNA in those patients' cancers. But the one thing is that viruses and infectious agents can manipulate the immune system and other components of the body to make our defenses weaker. And that is very difficult to, let's say, measure or quantify, or sometimes identify, because our immune system is waxing and waning. And if the immune system is waning, even briefly, from, let's say, an infection or ingestion or exposure,
Mhm.
all of which can be extremely variable. Waning a bit, the cancer just happens to acquire this just right genetic abnormality from an exposure. Boom, you get that foothold that can grow and overcome the immune system, even if it's coming back from an infection.
Mhm.
So there's
Right.
so many variables. It makes it really challenging, but we are understanding it better. And in fact, but in terms of understanding, is there a gene or a genetic abnormality that's caused by an infection? Those are the minorities. It's probably other effects on our body and our immune system that contributes.
Now, we all know that stress is a contributor. How
Right.
does stress contribute?
So that is a really good question. Very, very difficult to answer. And this is why, is because we in science, in medicine, in science, and you probably understand this very well, is that how do you measure it? In order to fulfill what we call Koch's hypothesis, is that you have to have something that you can measure and quantify. How do you measure stress? It's
Right.
not that easy to measure, and it's different for different people. So that's the
Mhm.
problem. So they have looked at, and I have to run, but they have looked at
Yes.
certain populations that have generally lower stress, and those are some very religious populations.
Mhm.
And they found reduced rates, and then they had prayer groups, and they've seen reduced rates of some cancers or some diseases in those
Right.
populations, and that's about the best indirect evidence of an effect of stress. But
Right.
stress is just really, really difficult to measure, and that's the problem. But we all believe that there is an effect, no question.
Mhm. Well, Dr. Tuscano, it has been fabulous having you with us. And I mean, we've opened up an entire Pandora's box with all of these questions. So we will have to bring you back so we can address them individually, because like you said, I think we could talk on any one of them for hours on end.
Yeah, these
And
are so interesting and relevant, and I really do enjoy talking about them. So, and just a great forum. So thank you so much for having me on.
absolutely. And you're welcome back anytime.
Okay, I'd love to be back.
Have a great evening and enjoy your meeting.
Okay, thank you. All right, good night.
Thank you,
Good
Doc.
night. Well, he is an extraordinary doctor, and I mean, you can see his passion, and he's like that all the time. Cancer is one of those areas, as he said, where it can be very depressing work because you do lose patients, and again, a large chunk of the patients will be lost because they don't have the will to live, they don't have the will to fight, maybe they just don't have the strength, whatever it is. A lot of them, their game is lost when they get the diagnosis. A lot of people, you give them the diagnosis, and whereas the diagnosis should be a call to battle, they pull the plug before they even get on the field. And so with that person, it's hard to fight it. And so he does lose patients. He loses patients all the time. All oncologists do. And yet he's always that even.
Doctor, it's funny because I had a good amount of time to talk to him before actually the show, and we've touched on that. And the first thing I asked him, and you almost kind of talk about like what got you into the oncology. My question was like, how do you deal with it? Because
Right.
you're not giving any good diagnoses to people 99% of the time. Hey, you have cancer, life may be short. Those are not the things that people want to hear about, and yet he is given that. So it's a tough place.
And that goes back to the show that we had with Michael Worthen, talking about the caretakers and the stress that the caretakers take on. And interestingly enough, a lot of doctors do end up with cancers because we do carry big loads of stress, and we do identify with our patients, and even some of us take on the stigmata of our patients.
Well, doctor, we also talked about stress because I actually had to share with him that I experienced cancer through my dad because he passed on with prostate cancer, and how he went, and the difficulty, and it's around us all, and you never know
Right.
who isn't. We talked about the fact that I'm in the insurance world and I'm in the senior market, and that's the population that's more vulnerable, and we talked about all that. But then one thing that we had in the discussion is about the stress, because I was explaining about our show base, and that I tackle a lot of stuff in my own shows. We tackle a lot of topics within this one, but what is that to do with health? And what I told them is that name something that does not affect our health. Business affects our health. The world affects our health. The environment affects our health. Whether it's mentally or physically, something has to do with us. So everything around us, I don't care if you're having entertainment time, it has to do with you, either positive or negative. And so your health
and that's true. That's true. Either positive or negative. Because when we say stress, people think of stress as a negative thing. But what's more stressful than getting married or going off to college? They're big changes, and anytime you have big changes, it's stressful. Anytime we face the unknown, it's stressful. So stress can be either positive or negative.
But doctor, right? So stress is it's the word that we use to describe a situation, right? But that's something that it's a reaction to what we have. I mean, not everybody reacts the same way to things.
Right.
You can react like my wife and I, we have this like, why are you so cold? Like, nothing phases you. It does phase me. It's just how my threshold to react to things is a little different than maybe most, right? Or other people.
Yes.
Now, again, I've been tried with a lot of different things, difficult or not. And sometimes you just got to deal with it. Like, I do believe that things happen and there's nothing you can do about them. Yeah. Well, they happen one way or the other. It's like, it's funny because the doctor talked about some of the tests, or at least the experiments and the studies about groups that were like more religious and whatever. And if you have faith, that's a whole different world. And it brings you a whole different concept of how you see the world. You said earlier, like, everybody wants to live, but we all know also that there is a time frame, right? And it's a fact. The question is, we want to live as long as we can, as healthy as we can, and as happy as we can. And that's really the magic, piece of it.
One would think that it's really kind of interesting, because you would expect that would be the case. But a lot of people are so afraid of what's on the other side of not living that they'll take life at all cost. And they'll be in complete and total misery, but they're like, but I'm not turning this thing off because I don't know what's on the other side. It could be worse. Well, or it could be non-existent.
Again, that's a whole different discussion, talking about topics. I mean, we can, that's a whole discussion, but you're right. It doesn't matter what belief we have. I mean, all our common beliefs, the major ones, are very similar. We believe in heaven. We believe in hell. There is purgatory. They're all similar. But the idea is we all hope for the better one, right? We all say we want to be in heaven. We may he or she rest in peace. We want people to be doing good. And we do hope that there is a better life than this. All right. And
we all want good karma.
Exactly. I can tell you, I do believe that we don't die per se. I mean, your body dies, your soul transfers to a different dimension, whatever you want to call it.
Your energy goes wherever the energy goes.
Exactly. We can talk about semantics, the quantums, the reality of things, the soul, the spirit, but that's a whole different topic. But the fact of the matter, we all cling to life because we're not ready. We don't know what's in the other side. That's the problem. And so far, no one came back and say, hey, I mean, I know people say I died, whatever. I'm not even going to that topic because that could be challenging and we can have opinions about it. By the way, everybody has different experiences, what they know. And yes, maybe they did. I don't know. But as far as I know, nobody that is, I guess, a scholar, somebody or that came back and gave us a true evidence of them departing and coming back. But the fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter. We have something, forms of beliefs and faith, so it's blind faith. We know that it's, we are here. We're not going to be here. The question is, how do we live? And knowing that, like I say this all the time, the only guaranteed thing in life is death. I mean, it sounds ironic, but it's sad, right? But it's reality. Right. So I look at it as this: do we accept reality for what it's worth, or not? Now, here's the challenge. It's one thing to say it, but I mean, doctor, I I heard you earlier talking about your case, right? And
Mhm.
dealing with the disease and stuff. That is a position that is tough. I listen, I've known you for almost 2 years now. Your attitude about it is different. If you never told me, I would have never known. Right. Even today, the way you mentioned it, I mean, people have seen you on the shows all the time, and probably they wouldn't even put one-on-one together. Your demeanor about it, your action, you live your life, you do your stuff like, there's nothing going on. But yeah, you're going through your struggles. And you said it.
Everybody's going through struggles.
Exactly.
We're all going through struggles.
That's right. And
everybody has cancer.
Well, I mean, doctor did clearly say we all have cells in our body. It's just a matter of the immune system kicking them out and not kicking them out.
Yeah. From the day you're born, you have cancer, and it just depends on whether your body gets rid of it fast enough or not.
Well, but see, like, how many people know that? That's a fact that probably to many of us is a new news. This is the first time they hear about this.
Jack.
Exactly. It's like, it's reality, right?
Mhm.
But you're right. Like, everybody, and again, talking about genetics, if it is in your family, there's a good chance you're going to get it. I mean, it may skip a generation, whatever. There are prerequisites, or there are, I guess, triggers to it as well. And I do want to touch on that with you, Doc.
Okay.
I mean,
Absolutely.
because you did say that and I know the first show we had was about preventative medicine.
Right.
And you talked about the work you do to make sure that people get all the stuff in advance.
Yes.
And it's funny because you said I'm supposed to be the poster child for this, but how did that happen? But the fact of the matter, like you did say, there are things that people can take some measures to eventually, at least from a lifestyle, help themselves reduce the risk of a mutation in the cells and getting a malignant type of cancer, right? So you did state that. So what are some of those things that you can, as a doctor, maybe suggest to our audiences today, since we are extending the discussion from Dr. Tuscano, into more of a back and forth here. But I think this is relevant to the discussion because it's almost like we're doing the analysis now.
Right. The post-game analysis.
But it's all good, right? So what are some of those things, doctor, that by the way, I love what you said about you went the holistic way, you went the traditional, and I do want to expand on that because let's be clear. I told you about my dad, but I also lost my ex-wife to breast cancer. I mean, we were separated, but we were still friends, and it was sad to see her go, and she suffered for a couple of years, and chemotherapy really ruined her. I mean, as far as we know, it was what actually hurt her more than actually the cancer, because her body was not able to take it.
Right. And that is why I made the choice in the beginning. There were certain types of chemotherapies that, might have taken care of it faster. But knowing what I knew, I also knew that they were much more aggressive. And I knew that I'm very sensitive to medications. I have chemical sensitivities. I even have an allergy to alcohol, So
oh my God.
I don't get to drink the martini or the daiquiri, but I barely take anything at all. I don't even take Tylenol. Tylenol makes me sleepy. Okay. So I was very reluctant to go down that road. And we discussed a lot of options. And at the time I began down that path, immunotherapy wasn't necessarily being offered to everybody. And you basically got offered the hard stuff first. And then if you failed the hard stuff, you got offered something else. And the problem that I saw with that is, having had patients of my own that I had marched off for chemotherapy, only to have them to succumb shortly thereafter, and knowing, I just kind of sentenced them because they were doing really nifty before I sent them. And then after that, it was a quick downhill course. And again, it's multifactorial, because in some ways, some of the older chemotherapy, kind of the goal was, it was a race. And the race was to kill the cancer cells before you killed the person, because they were non-targeted. And so they worked by killing rapidly dividing cells. And where are some of the most rapidly dividing cells? In your gut. And so the gut was often very much affected. And a lot of people died from cancer not because of the cancer per se, but because of the cachexia that they developed. It's basically a starvation that they developed because the cancer is going to get it. It's a perfect parasite that's sucking all of your energy and nutrients and feeding itself. And if you are unable to eat because of your chemotherapy, if it is causing your body so much stress and distress that your body is now immunocompromising and it's weakening and not having the strength to fight, well, guess what? The cancer is just busy chugging along, revving itself up, and it now has more soldiers on the battlefield, and your soldiers are weak, and they've been tromping through the snow with no boots, and they've all got frostbite. Okay,
but
their
Doctor,
toes just fell off.
But Doc, what you describe is also the idea that it's like, yes, it's killing the cancer in a way, but it's killing your body faster than the cancer cells.
Body, and the race is, can it kill that cancer before it kills you? That was the old treatment. And they've come along with newer, much more targeted treatments. That
radiation therapy, right?
Yeah. Well, yes. Radiation therapy used to be it was brutal. You end up with radiation sickness, but now they have very, very targeted radiation therapies that can basically cone down. So just the cancer itself is
laser focused kind of cancer.
Because they use like little nanoparticles. Since the development of nanoscience, science has just advanced dramatically, and the radiation therapy is one of those places when you can take a little nanoparticle of radiation and put it right where you need to kill a cancer. Then you've done something, because you're not going to destroy the rest of the body around it. Because, basically, radiation therapy used to be like a nuclear bomb. Once it dropped, it obliterated everything. So it was just that big of a deal. Well, now they've honed it down, so it's very, very targeted. And he talked about the targeted therapies, the immunotherapies. The immunotherapies target down onto just the specific cells. Now, can some other cells get involved? Yeah, if they have receptors that look like the cells that the chemotherapy is targeting, it can sometimes get the wrong cells. But for the most part, it is getting specifically the cancer cells, and it is so effective at it that one of the things that we have to be concerned about, especially like when we're doing the infusion therapies. And an infusion is when you're given an IV that is putting the immunotherapy directly into a vein, and then it's boom, going out where it needs to go. And it's, it's like Pac-Man. It's boom, 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 boom. It's killing those cancer cells. What can happen though is it's killing those cancer cells so quickly, and as it kills them and they're dying, they're throwing off, basically waste products, and the system can become poisoned by the waste products that are being thrown off, and one can become very, very ill. So when we go for immunotherapies, the patients are watched very carefully for a while after the immunotherapy, because usually when that happens, that kind of a storm occurs shortly after the immunotherapy, because that's when the cancer cells are being most aggressively destroyed. So if you're going to get that kind of crisis, it usually happens in short order after.
So Doctor, a couple of things that come on. First, the mRNA, right? The stuff that they use now in the technology of vaccine. So it sounds like almost the same concept, whereby it's this, they go in, they do their stuff, they go target and stuff. And I think that's potentially the future. And it's not new, it's been around, but now it's more common. And I think after the COVID,
and it's becoming more refined.
Exactly. So there's that. But then the most traditional, especially for example, leukemia, we've always known bone marrow to be, transplant was like the core, kind of where it came in. I believe stem therapy, or is what that drives. Now, I have heard, or read also, that now you can use stem from fat. Is that medically, correct?
No, that's not quite correct.
Okay. Good.
What you're talking about is pluripotential cells, and so those stem cells can be utilized for a lot of different things, but that's not the same as a bone marrow transplant. And one of the things that one has to understand, or that people should understand, when we talk about transplants of any sort, unless it were an autologous transplant, or unless you were transplanting some of your own previously healthy tissue into your diseased tissue, then the chances are you're going to reject. The chances of you getting a perfect match are very slim. And even as I say that, I kind of think about that, because that's not really something that usually happens, where you've harvested your whatever to give to yourself and your future self. Other than harvesting our eggs for future pregnancy. But I mean, there may come a time. For example, I use a product that comes out of Japan, and when I go to Malaysia, I use that product heavily, and it is an amazing product. It is not used here in the United States, and part of the reason for that is because it's human stem cells and human growth factors, right. And so we use sheep stem cells, and I'm like, yeah, that didn't work so well with the horse stuff, did it? But that's a whole nother discussion. The focus being around the fetuses and aborted fetuses and so on and so forth. But in Japan, the answer to that is really simple. Every pregnancy, instead of throwing away the placentas, which is usually what we do here, there are some few people who keep their placenta, and they may freeze dry it, or they may actually eat it raw right there. And people are like, oh my God, ew. But think about it. What do animals do in the wild? The first thing they do is consume the placenta. Why? Because it's extremely rich in nutrients. That has been the home for a baby that has built a baby for 10 months. And that's another factoid there, people. A pregnancy is not 9 months. We're always told pregnancy is 9 months, but from the date of conception, it's 10 months. So
see, people forget that part.
Yeah, for 10 months, we've been building a baby in this warm, fuzzy, nutrient-rich place. And then baby comes out, and we're like, we truck it like garbage. And yet it still remains nutrient-rich for a mommy who is depleted. She has just given birth to a baby, and she has just spent 10 months giving up her building block to the child. I mean, talk about the perfect parasite. There is no more perfect parasite than a fetus as you're building the baby.
Oh, he's definitely eating you up. He's eating everything from you.
Yeah. And I mean, but every woman that has ever had a child will tell you, my body was never the same again. Doesn't matter how healthy she is, you can be the epitome of health, and you can come out of it on the other end and still be the epitome of health, but it is not the same health. And some of the things that happen are internal. You hear about women banging out babies, boom, 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 boom. She just dropped the baby and she's pregnant a month later. We highly discourage that. We encourage putting at least a year in between babies. And if you know that you want stair-step kids like that, then from the minute you drop that baby, you start supplementing, you start eating right to build the next baby. And hopefully you're nursing the baby that you've got going on. So you're eating to nourish that baby well, but also to give yourself enough nourishment to build for the next baby. Because again, they are perfect parasites. And what better way to start that process by consuming your own placenta? Now, in Japan, what they do is really pretty smart. They freeze those placentas. They keep the placentas and they keep the cords, and now they're making products out of those. They're taking the stem cells from the cords. It's not coming from aborted fetuses. It's coming from placentas and cords that would have, in the United States, been thrown away, you know? So it's waste at the highest level. We can use those cells to treat ourselves or our future children. I cannot remember the name of the movie. There was a movie about a little girl who had cancer, and the parents decided to have another child so they could donate to the child they were going to lose.
I know which movie. I forgot the name. Yep.
Yeah. And so, you know, it brings up a whole lot of ethical questions. But what if at the birth, her stem cells had been harvested because her placenta was kept, you know, her umbilical cord was kept, and they could use her own cells? Then the question becomes, though, when we start to venture down that road, the fact that she got the cancer, was she predisposed even from birth to getting there? You know, would having these particular cells actually help her, or would it have the same outcome? But I got there by trying to say that one of the things that people have to understand about transplantation is that, you know, again, we see these things as a panacea. And if you're talking about transplanting, whether it's transplanting bone marrow or transplanting a kidney or a heart or whatever, you have to understand that you are doing a trade-off. You're trading one disease for another, basically, because in order to keep that kidney, that heart, that marrow, you have to be immunocompromised. You have to be immunosuppressed, because if you don't stay on the immunosuppressants, your body recognizes the foreign and starts to reject it and destroy it, and may even turn on your own tissues and start to reject and destroy them too. And I had the unpleasant experience of having that happen. I got exposed to COVID by someone who wasn't being very careful with me. And I ended up, you know, it triggered an inflammatory response. And all of a sudden, my body was destroying its own red blood cells. And I got down to about a quarter of a tank of blood. And you know, the doctors were shaking their heads and gnashing their teeth and, you know, counting me out. And, you know, yea, though I walked through the valley of the shadow of death, I was there. And yet, you know, I had my download that it wasn't my time, that I had things to do. And one of the things that I had to do was this show, you know. And so I had unfinished business that I had to take care of, and I knew that I wasn't going to die. The doctors were not so convinced, you know. And
will of living, and again, also,
it really was a will and a belief in something higher, a higher power. And you know, I believe. You know, I don't believe, I know, but in the event that I'm just horrifically wrong, well, there is a placebo effect, you know? So
there is. It's big.
Yeah, it's a huge placebo effect. And so if I'm going to be wrong, I'd rather err on the right side of wrong. So I'm going with it. It's my story, and I'm rolling with it.
but doctor, you're touching on a lot of things. One is, first of all, I believe no one dies without due time, right? And that doesn't matter. You can be, there are people that are,
absolutely,
you know, it's funny. You had that diagnosis or even prognosis, yet people were with zero diagnosis, prognosis, and they're gone, right? People were completely healthy. They dropped that heart attack and they're gone. So
I had a friend, a very dear friend. His name was Archie Graham. And, you know, Archie would walk to the end of the world for me. And I knew that Archie had a romantic interest in me, and I didn't feel that way about him. He was in the brother zone, but we were very close. We were extremely close, and we all knew that Archie was going to die from kidney failure because he was one of the earliest transplant patients. He received his first kidney at the age of 4 and was one of the first ones that was ever done. And before it was all over, Archie had had 5 kidney transplants, which was pretty much unheard of. And Archie passed away in 2016, about a month after my mother did. And we sang together at my mother's memorial service because Archie was a phenomenal singer. But he did not pass away from kidney failure. He passed away unexpectedly from stomach cancer. So who knew?
Listen, you're right, doctor. It's not unheard of. I mean, it's very common. People think, again, we look at wars, right? We look at stuff, earthquakes.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people in hospital beds and they're still struggling and fighting and they're still alive. And someone can just not wake up, period.
And then other people get into a car.
Exactly. So you that's the thing. That's why by understanding that rule of life, like I always say, we live until we live no more. Just live it happy, live it right. That's it. I mean, you got to do the best. And by the way, the fact that you're here, the fact that you're doing, the fact that you're healing, it is meant to be. So if you believe,
absolutely,
that's what it is. So, but here's the thing: there's one thing about belief that is blind, and there's belief with action. This is not like
part. That part.
You got to do your thing. I mean, do your part. And when my dad was sick, it was like, is he going? If he had pneumonia and he survived it, that didn't take him. The second time he had pneumonia, he was gone. So people said, well, DNR and so on and stuff. Like, listen, if he's going to pull through, he's going to pull through. If he's not, there's nothing I can do. Because he did it. His body's going to stand. And if he's not going to die, it's not time, it's not time. And so that's kind of like how the attitude was. But the fact is, these are real facts, and we have to understand them in a way. Now, it's easy said than done. But again, I'm talking to you. You've gone through this. And I love what you said about the transplants, because people don't realize it is a foreign body. Now we talk compatibility and, you look for the best, donors and all the stuff. But even that, it is
very seldom are you going to find an exact perfect match. It almost never happens. I mean, even with identical twins, a lot of times there's going to be one tweak of a difference, because even though they got the same exact genetic material, they don't have the same exact experience once they exit the womb. And that experience over there can tweak the gene just this way. It's called epigenetics, the light switches that get turned on and off, that turn the genes on and off.
And that's what makes us unique, right? Different. Yeah. So
absolutely.
But thank you for clarifying that for people, because I think we see it on maybe movies and see stuff, and it looks like, but there is more to this than people know. I mean, coming from you as a provider and someone who actually is dealing with this and knows more about this than the average person does. And by the way, the concept you talked about, the placenta, and you mentioned something interesting about, the baby as a parasite. I know people was like, you can't talk about my baby as a parasite. Well, it was not derogatory.
It is not derogatory. But I mean, think about this. The baby is building bones. And so one of the things that happened, and I missed this question on my national board of medical examiners the first time I saw the question. It asked a question about which people were more likely to have certain issues. And it asked about people having dental problems. Who was most likely to have dental problems? Pregnant women, or not pregnant women, postpartum women. Why? Because the baby sucks the calcium out of your body, including your teeth. So women are more likely to lose their teeth than men are, because they lose the calcium out of the bone structure that supports those teeth,
Actually, doctor, as you said, I mean, the more deliveries you have, the more it's weakened. And
exactly.
And by the way, even like when my wife was pregnant with the kids, doctors, supplements, calcium, this, that, iron deficiency was a big one too. You need to get a lot
Deficiency
of
is a
it.
huge one. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, that's why there is all the prenatal,
It
vitamins and
takes
stuff.
a lot of work to build a baby.
Listen, men are easy, right? It's not, we don't carry it. It's one thing. I mean, you guys are doing, a terrific job at it. And we give you all, that's why we love our
No,
mamas, right?
see, the carrying it is not the big deal. It's the getting that puppy out, I mean, think about pushing a bowling ball out of your behind, okay?
Listen, I wouldn't even challenge. Listen, I did have an experience. Now it's a joke, but a kidney stone, I was told it's just as close, if not as bad, because that was bad. And I had 2 deliveries in my life. So I've been in that painful level, but I cannot possibly. As a matter of fact, it's funny, you made a joke earlier about, the babies and like, you are the parasite. Well, I've heard that a lot when I was a kid. Like, the day I had you, my body was never the same. My mom was always telling me that, you ruined me. So I know how it feels. And there's nothing we can do about that as humans. It is the law of nature. It is standard. Everybody goes through it. If you exist, you went through, a mother's womb and you're here.
Yeah.
And so,
and I mean, you know what? And it's designed that way. It's really an interesting thing because they measured the level of pain that women go through. There are some women who have easy childbirths and they slide out, but basically labor is called labor for a reason. And they measured the level of pain that gets to, and it actually registers at a higher level than the human form is generally able to tolerate. So why do we keep popping out these kids? Well, because in the design of it, the minute you pop that kid out, the endorphins go wild to create that love bond with the child. And I remember after having my son, immediately after having my son, I looked at this magnificent creation. And every head in the room snapped around to look at me like I had lost my mind because I was like, oh my gosh, he's beautiful. I could do that again. And they were like,
well, but it is true. But it's amazing because to your point, if we are blessed on one thing, right? And I think you can, confirm this. The pain, our brain does not register the pain. It doesn't, there's no memory for pain.
It has no memory of it. It registers it. It has no memory of it.
That's why
until the first labor pain comes around the next time. And then all of a sudden that whole memory circuit flips on and you're like, oh, that's right. No. I didn't want to do this again.
Well, true. But it's you have a memory that you had pain, but it's not, you don't have the actual pain memory. So I think it's 2 different things.
You do when you get that first labor pain that comes around the next time. Up until then, you talk to women and, they was labor painful? Oh, yeah, my labor was painful. I had the worst pain ever, but they have no concept of what that meant. And, you can talk about it till the cows come home. Oh, yeah, I had a difficult delivery and, it was painful. And then you go to have the next one and you're like, oh, I forgot what this was all about. Why did I want to do this? And women say the most amazing things to their OBGYNs, and their OBGYNs were like, A, I wasn't there when you did this. B, I'm not accountable for it. C, I'm really trying to help you through this. Spare me.
I've heard some funny stories about that. Like, it was fun, when it was starting, right? Now it's not as fun. So you hear a lot of those things. But
I see a lot of funny incidents in delivery rooms between wives and husbands. The things that wives tell their husbands under the duress of labor are quite entertaining.
Listen. I mean, we as men, we cannot experience it. We have to support it. And I've been in all my deliveries, 3 deliveries. I cut the umbilical cord myself. I was there from the first kick to the actual delivery and the baby crying. And it is emotional. It is different to experience it. And yes, I mean, while the mom is pushing out and the baby is coming out, it's one thing that they're feeling it, but you see in that birth, that's another thing. I mean, it's just it's an amazing opportunity, for those who had the pleasure of seeing that and being part of it. It is unique and, it stays with you for life. And actually you remember you. The first thing that came to my mind is like, I did this. I came out too, and I gave pain to my mom and so on and so forth. So like, you might even relate to that in a way. Again, I mean, I'm crazy. Some people's like, what the hell's going on with this guy on the show? but the fact of the matter, when I reflect on everything, and frankly, I was attached to my mom, so I realized I related to exactly what she used to tell me. Like, you did a lot of damage, and you give me a lot of pain, and it's one thing, but it's beautiful. It's the birth, it's life. And there's nothing, it's part of what we are and who we are, and we
it's
exist.
an amazing experience. I mean, a lot of women opt to do drugs so that they don't experience the pain. And
Epidural is not fair.
Each is his own. I did mine 100% natural, and I'm so glad that I did, because I mean, the whole experience is something that we don't talk about enough as a society, as this Western society that we live in. We don't really talk about it so much. And that's not all Western society, because I mean, I grew up in the UK, and in the UK we had midwives and doulas, and women did talk about that experience more. But in the United States, it's really a very sterile kind of thing, and people don't talk very much about what they experience. And I remember, as I was going through, particularly the delivery, there were certain aspects of it that I was like, wow, I never realized I would go through this. And I remember the moment when he turned in preparation for coming down, and I felt this odd scooping sensation. And I was just so fascinated by how the body knows to turn him and put him into position so that he's the most likely to be able to fit through that canal. Because if he doesn't turn and fit into the position, C-section, you end up with a breach that can't get through. And, now we can do C-sections reasonably safely. There was a point in time when you couldn't do them. And a woman who ended up with a breach, unless she had an incredibly good midwife who could turn that baby internally, and a lot of times, even with a good midwife, an internal turning meant that she was going to tear and she was going to die. So if it was a breach, there was a high probability that she was going to die. But yet there weren't that many breaches. And I remember when I was going through my pregnancy, I was going through internship, and my first clerkship was in the NICU, in the neonatal intensive care unit. Mm-hmm. And they showed this film about all of the things that could go wrong from conception to the end. And at the end of the film, the pediatrician turned around and looked at me, and he was like, "I'm so sorry."
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking, oh my God, it's amazing any of them ever come right. It's amazing any of them ever deliver right. And yet the body has it all orchestrated and makes it happen. That's a miracle. I mean, it's multiple miracles.
The miracle of birth is big. I mean, and we can break it down to science, from the creation, from the inception, from the cells, from the womb, from the ovaries. I mean, and just the stages.
Every single stage along the way can go so wrong in so many ways. It's amazing that any one of us comes anything that even approximates. We'll say typical. We won't say normal. Typical.
Doctor, it's funny, right? I'm thinking, we started the conversation with an oncologist talking about, a diagnosis and a prognosis of death, 100%, or at least, high, and then now we're talking about life. Amazing, isn't it? I mean, what a twist of a discussion.
Full circle.
Well, listen, life and death are one or the other.
They're all part of the same continuum. And I mean, here in the United States, we make death this horrible, tragic thing, but death is a part of the cycle of life. And, we talked about that even with the oncologist, talking about, extending the life. Where do we draw the line? Are we playing God by breaking the cycle up? And generally, when we start to tweaking Mother Nature, it's going crazy somewhere else. So what are we doing is the question.
Well, doctor, so there is a controversy there, because first of all, we do believe that in today's modern age, we almost are extending, we live longer, but that is not necessarily true in a way. Let me explain. Because if you go back in history, right, and we go back to, I guess, the prophetic days, right, we do know of people that lived on earth who actually, at least from a biblical perspective or a religious perspective, they lived longer. I mean, Noah, and Adam, our, forefather. I mean, if you, for those that believe, we believe in that they lived a longer life, and many nations came that lived longer lives.
Yes.
And it's funny because almost that kind of reduced to a point, and then now it's kind of like going back with the science part. But people
we're actually reversing that now, though, because we were living longer, we were creating longevity, but in the last number of years, we're actually the life expectancy is now declining. So and there are probably lots of reasons for that. I mean, and one of the reasons is definitely because
pollution.
I mean, we're creating a toxic world that we're living in, and so the organisms are getting weaker. He talked about the immune system. As the immune system weakens, we don't do as well. And I mean, we're able to measure that. Actually, we can measure something on the gene called a telomere. And, a telomere tells you basically kind of what your life expectancy is going to be. If it's young and healthy, you have this nice long telomere. But as the body collects more and more toxins and more stressors, then the telomeres start to shrink on the DNA. And the shorter they are, the older or more senescent the cell is. And so we can actually look at those cells and predict someone's longevity by looking at those telomeres.
Well, but that's we're talking about the clinical longevity, because I mean, you can have an accident and that ends without, I mean, we're talking the medical aspect of it. But the fact is that also, it's controversial to a degree, because I believe personally, I don't care if we can extend it in the way we think we're extending it. It is not extended because of the medicine. I think the medicine and the science is the tool, but at the end of the day, it is, is it the time? Is it not the time? Is that the lifespan you're going to have? I mean, from a religious aspect.
And yes, I would agree with that. And what I tell patients, because, everybody wants to live longer. And I'm like, I practice longevity medicine. And I tell patients right out the gate, I can't make you live any longer than your ticket is meant to, exactly. to give you. And I'm like, I don't care what you believe. There's a programming. There is a programming, and a genetic program, a cellular programming, whatever it is. There's a programming that says you're about to live this long. And then if you take the science or the medicine out of that, I personally believe that whether you call it written in the book or whatever, I believe that every one of us has a finite existence on this earth. And just like my friend Archie, who had 5 kidney transplants, and along the way there were so many places where he shouldn't have been here. I myself have had a number of near-death experiences where I shouldn't have been here. Part of it's my strong will, but part of it, I believe, it just was not my time. I had more to do, and when my time comes, my time will come, and who knows what it will be. I may die in my sleep, I might get hit by a bus, but one way or the other, on that date, that particular moment in time that I'm supposed to go, I'm out of here.
That's like, I mean, it's funny, that movie Final Destination, right? You run, but you don't run from your death to death. It doesn't matter. You can't outrun your death. As fun as that is, just a movie, and it's just kind of funny a little bit. But the fact of the matter is, let's put it this way.
We can't outrun death.
There's 8 billion humans on this planet. I think about 7 billion of them believe in God and an existence and an hereafter. And maybe I'm wrong, maybe half of them. But we know that the majority of all the world does have that kind of belief. Doesn't matter what denomination. And at the end of the day,
it doesn't matter whether you call it God or not. I mean, you can say, there is no God, but if you believe that there is anything greater than oneself, then, and even if you believe yourself, atheism, atheism is a religion as well.
Yes. So. But I'm saying, even if that's the case, everybody kind of has the concept. It's almost like We all know it. There is a start point and an end point. There is an expiration date. There is a countdown from the minute you actually delivered, and that countdown could be 100 years, 70 years, 50 years, doesn't matter, and
could be an hour.
Could be an hour. It can be, people don't even make it, right? But here's the thing. It's not so much, I think the fear is not so much. And we talked about the hereafter. I think the other concept is, do you want to live and healthy? You see, you can live long, but if you are unable to move, unable to do your ADLs, activity of daily living, you are literally just not able to do things. How would you want that life? And that's why we all say, and you want to live a happy, vitally, fulfilled life.
Right. A life of purpose. And
exactly.
and that is exactly what I tell my patients. I said, I am a longevity management physician. I cannot guarantee you that I'm going to make you live any longer than you're already programmed to live. What I can guarantee you is that I will help you to live healthier.
And by the way, that's all what I think, everybody, because we all know that it's going to be a moment, but we hope that we're going to live to that moment, happy ever after, healthy, with the best of our movement and ability and mobility. And ultimately,
I can't even guarantee you good health. Your genetic program may be such that you are going to get X, Y, and Z. It is on your genes. It's immutable. You're going to get it. But if I can help you with your nutrition, your fitness, your mindset, and all of that, and I can push that gene back so that instead of turning on at 40, it doesn't turn on until 75. That's given you good. 35 years of healthy longevity.
But doctor, here's the thing. We do hurt our own selves as humans.
Yes, we do.
The choices we make are implicated in this diagnosis of health, right? One is, you talked about you're allergic to alcohol, but it is almost, not cool not to have alcohol, right? And it's part of society. So you do drink.
I've never been cool.
Exactly. Well, I'm saying, no, I'm sure you're one of the coolest. Yeah, it's funny because I don't drink either, but my vice was orange juice. So people used to make fun of me, like, do not give Hisham orange juice. Because the minute I get orange juice, I'm like hyper, I'm bouncy, right? So just do not give him orange juice. That was my high. But you're right. It's part of it. Now cigarettes, now we have vaping. And now it's all over the place. All these things that we do. Now we have also, like you're talking about toxins in the air. We have EMFs, we have this, we have that, radiation, blah, 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 all over us. And
we have zombie drugs and people are doing them.
Oh yes, I've seen those. And it is sad when you see someone, on the ground, I don't know. It's but humans.
But those are choices that people make. They know that this stuff is doing stuff, but they still make a choice.
Well, you're like, I just had a show. It's posting, I think, tomorrow. No one puts a gun to your head, right?
Exactly.
Literally no one. Maybe there's a scenario where that can happen, but that's like one. You know what I mean? But I will take the
poison. Take the poison.
Well, you do have those. Someone, I don't know. For example, someone gets kidnapped, whatever, and there's trafficking, there's this that can happen.
Yeah.
But that's like maybe a minute percentage. But overall, we do this voluntarily. People go to club, they drink, they get this. Exactly, and you're doing it, and it's like it's pleasurable. It is limited pleasure, and then what's up? Even we talk fitness. I have a lot of shows about fitness. So you go to a gym and you're like doing crazy movements. But what are you doing to your joints? What are you doing to your other stuff? I was
going to say, there's a price even for fitness. And there has to be balance. That's one of the important things. There has to be balance. Just about anything in excess is going to be too much. And you talked about something, you touched on something before, and I'm circling back to it. People, and it's almost a little bit of a pet peeve for me as the physician. You say, okay, X, Y, and Z is going wrong, and people are like, okay, well, pray. We're going to pray, and everything's going to be fixed. My health is going to be fixed. The world is going to be fixed. Everything's going to be fixed as long as we pray. I am sorry, people. Pray doesn't work. God hears you But he has an expectation that you take part in this life that he gave you. You have a responsibility to use your gifts and talents. He gave them to you for a reason.
You know, Doc, I'm going to give a simple example. And by the way, thank you for bringing that because, you know, you're right. Prayer is good. I mean, I believe in prayer. Wholeheartedly. I mean, today begins Ramadan for us, you know, so we'll start fasting tomorrow. Yes. And I'm going to have an all-nighter. I'm going to be praying, doing stuff. So I'm going to enjoy that. Yeah. But that's spirituality. But the prayer alone does not guarantee that you're going to get the money. You still, yes, it could guarantee you're going to get the money, but you got to take the right actions.
You know, have to take the steps to secure it.
Exactly. Here's the thing, right? I've not seen the sky actually throwing money at anybody. You know, if you know, even the birds, they got to get out of their nest to actually fly to eat, right? If you stay in the nest, you're not eating. Now, maybe if you're a baby bird, but really, if you're old, you're gonna have to go somewhere and bring food to your family. I mean, animals have to go and hunt to actually eat. You know, absolutely. You know, so those are the things. But even a simple thing, we're talking about hurting yourself. Well, I can guarantee you, if you jump in front of a truck, you're probably not going to make it. Yeah. If you put your hands in, you know, if you see a volcano or lava, you're not going to go and walk into it and think that maybe I'm just going to walk over it. You know,
I actually have a funny story about that. I went to Hawaii a few years back, and
whatever the volcano there, the live volcano.
Yeah, and you know, we're going and we're looking at this volcano, and you can walk across the volcano, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like,
what am I doing here?
Look like a good idea, because there was just an energy that I could feel. It was palpable, and I'm like, I'm really not feeling this is a good idea. Oh, it hasn't gone off in years, and people always walk it, and you know, it's safe, it's this, it's that. It's lovely. It's an experience. A week later, that entire area where we stayed was obliterated. It no longer exists. It's new land because that puppy erupted and took everything out in its path. And I'm like, yep, I could have been walking across that.
That's the thing. Like, you know, but we know you do not want to go there, right? You know, it's the same thing. Would you put your hand in the stove while it's cooking and baking? No. I mean, we know what's wrong with things. We know, for example, cigarettes kill you. They have a warning on the box. I'm sorry, you know, but people still smoke.
And the Marlboro man was as cool as he wanted to be, and he's just as dead. Okay. And he died from what? Lung cancer from the cigarette.
That's news to me, but hey, I mean, for the audiences, probably because that was the coolest thing. I mean, I remember the
Marlboro man.
He was really listen, but I mean, eventually it got to the point where it was clear, and now he has the warning now. But giving somebody the warning and I'm providing them with the tool, it's like here's a gun. Maybe, you know, if you point at yourself, maybe it's not going to kill you. I mean, hello. You know, it's that kind of thing. It's like,
do you know how many people actually kill themselves playing with guns and not realizing they're still loaded?
I'm with you.
Coming back from Saudi Arabia, I would go up to the ward to take care of the soldiers. What happened to you? I shot my armpit out. You know, it's shit. What? I'm leaning on my weapon. My son, one of my sons, he and his buddy were playing, and he shot him through the eye because the gun that they didn't think was loaded actually was loaded.
A real gun?
I'm
assuming the dude is gone?
No. Well, he is now actually, and he was killed by a gun, but not at that particular time. So he made it from 13 to 40.
Wow.
But
but again, you know something is dangerous, but it's available, and it's, you know, like that takes us to the debate of weapons and arms and firearms and so on. Yes. But the idea is we all know the bad things. We know, and listen, I mean, I'm not going to go into the pharma world here in terms of the drugs, but even the drugs, I mean, I know they have benefits. We take some of them, but you said earlier you're not really a big fan of drugs and stuff. But, you know, every one of those come with a commercial with about, you know, 30 seconds of everything that is good, not good for you.
Right. And those side effects are real. I mean, some of the side effects, the way those studies work, because people are like, well, it says it's going to do all of this. Well, 9 times out of 10, it won't do all of that, because when they do those drug studies, people are put into the drug study. And the way that works is, if you're taking the drug, any symptom that you have has to be recorded. Yeah. It may not have anything to do with the drug at all. And so, you get a lot of people who caught a cold during the time that they had the drug going. Well, everybody else in their family had a cold too, and they weren't taking the drug. So chances are it wasn't because of the drug that they caught the cold, but it still has to be recorded. At the same time, there are other things that happen with the drug that may not happen very often, but that may be a direct side effect of the drug. And then you have to weigh the risk benefit. Like I said, I bled down, lost almost all of my red blood cells. And to stop that process, they put me on prednisone. And I was on high dose prednisone, had, the side effects. I had a big moon face and, had a little bit of a buffalo hump. I did not look like me. I looked so not like me that my phone wouldn't recognize me from my facial sinus.
I'm sorry. I just got a visual. I'm sorry.
So, I mean, there were side effects that were clearly going on, but some of the side effects from prednisone can be very bad. They knock out organs. They can knock out your pancreas, leave you with diabetes, all kinds of other things. And I was on the high dose prednisone from December until May. And, the whole time I'm thinking, oh my God, what is the prednisone going to do to me? And so I made it to May, and I'm like, can we get off of the prednisone? He's like, you can get off of the prednisone. I'm like, oh my gosh, I actually made it through this ridiculously high dose of prednisone with no side effects. A week later, I get ready to get out of bed, and I have excruciating pain in my hip. 6 weeks later, I finally get the MRI, only to find out that both hips have been completely destroyed. And months later, I had to have both hips replaced. So you say medication, and I'm like,
well,
no.
But doctor, again, you got to the point where you had no choice, and you did it. And
yeah, it was a risk benefit. It was a risk benefit thing, and it's like prednisone, horrible drug, took my hips. Was a pretty good trade-off for my life,
Again, but for example, my personal doctor, he is also my mom's doctor, and he always when he prescribes, he gives you all the good stuff and like the potential risk, and explain that it's 1% that can happen, whatever. But then he does testing, like for example, let's do blood work, regulate to see how if there's an impact before to continue, test it a little bit. Let's do a routine check to make sure that if there's no damage. If it continues over 3 months and everything's good, then we'll do a every 3 months checkup. So it makes sense that way, and at least you get a little comfort because there's no damage.
And even if there is an impact, again, it's a risk that you have to weigh. Is it worth the risk? Yes, I know that I'm having some damage here, but what is going to happen if I don't take this risk? What is this damage here? And I mean, as part of that weighing things out, for me, it's like, okay, is there something else that I can do? I'm on no medications at all now. We decided eventually that the risk-benefit ratio was not good enough. I was having too many side effects from the medication. And while off of medication, because they took me off of all medication, because they're like, oh my gosh, are we getting ready to kill her with this medication? So they took me off of all the medication. And all of a sudden, I'm cooking with oil. We're doing really well. And so then the risk-benefit thing goes, does it make sense to put her back on medication? No, it does not make sense to take the risk of putting her back on medication. So what do I do in exchange? I don't just sit here and say, okay, I'm going to pray, and it's all going to be good. No, I do my due diligence I eat an exceedingly healthy diet. I eat a tremendous number of vegetables. I eat mushrooms almost
antioxidants.
Every single day, antioxidants every single day, eating close to my skin color, meaning dark leafy green vegetables, dark reds, dark oranges, high in antioxidant foods, grape juice, currants, high antioxidant foods. Does it make a difference? I am a lot healthier than a lot of people who do not have the diagnosis. I'm doing a lot more with this diagnosis than a lot of people are doing supposedly perfectly healthy.
Listen, God bless. It is. But thank you for sharing that, because that's important. Because again, nutrition is a big part of the game. It's everything. I mean, it's the mindset, it's the nutrition, it's the activities.
It's the activity,
you're
it's the movement.
exactly.
It's
You're
the
moving.
movement.
You're busy.
Mhm.
But those are all things.
I'm in life. I'm in
Exactly.
life. And people talk about surviving cancer. I will never be a cancer survivor. I choose not to be a cancer survivor because I'm a cancer thriver. And I will
That's powerful.
thrive my way through life, whether there's cancer, no cancer, whatever else may come up. I mean, I've had some stuff in my life. I mean, I've had some stuff in my life that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. And people are like, how did you make it through that?
Resilience.
It was a choice to love this life I've been given. No matter what happens, I woke up this morning. What a gift. What a gift.
That's when people have that attitude, it's a whole different thing. That's what makes people more resilient than others and different in their approach to stress and everything. Because to your point, I am alive. And with your diagnosis and stuff, many people may have given up, and you're not. You're living your life day in, day out, and enjoying, doing the best you can with what you have. And you're not just sleeping and waiting. You're taking the necessary steps to have a good, healthy day every day. And that's what makes a difference in a lot of things. I mean, and now someone can say, well, maybe you have the means, you can afford these extra things. We talked earlier about
I'm sorry, nobody can afford cancer. Nobody can afford cancer because the doctor told you, we've got treatments that are getting ready to come out that
$1 million.
are $1 million. Well, I mean, if you're a billionaire and you're dropping $1 million every month, guess what happens to your billions?
Yeah, well, that's for the billions. For the average, Joe, it's not happening.
What's interesting? What's interesting with that is because of the way the system is set up, the billionaires make it happen, and the lower level makes it happen because they are on the public assistance and all, and then the
majority
middle tier gets caught in the middle.
Yep. I can relate to that. I know exactly how that feels. And it's funny because, but even Medicaid and Medicare, even though these treatments are approved, they're not your first choice as an insurer. I can tell you that much. You're not getting the treatment, at first run. You're getting the standard chemo, you're getting the potential radiation, and that's you have to test all of it. And by the way, most specialty hospitals do not even take insurance. Let's be clear.
Right.
And I was going to ask the doctor that, I think when we bring him back, we can dive into
UC Davis does take insurances, and that's it. It's a university hospital. University hospitals usually take the insurances.
But for example, Sloan Kettering.
Private hospitals do not.
Exactly. And so
they can't afford to.
Yeah, it's costly, but so I always had a question. I mean, I don't know, we make billions of dollars sometimes, to do, we're going to talk inflation, we're going to talk into economy now and banking. But the fact of the matter is, the cost could be absorbed if governments wanted to, if the world wants to, it could be, just part of it's a guaranteed, benefit that you get and that's it. It doesn't have to be.
Now you're getting into the socialized medicine kind of thing. And people are like, well, there are countries where I can get treated and, it's my right to get medical care and I don't have to pay for it. Yes, you do. When you go over to Sweden and Norway and those countries, yes, they have beautiful socialized medical systems. They also pay the highest taxes in the world. And they're also the happiest people.
Yeah, well, listen, I don't know. You're in California. I'm in the New York and Jersey area. I think we're just as expensive.
Expensive. That doesn't have anything to do with taxes, though, necessarily.
Well, no, actually, I pay taxes at the kazoo. It's just we're heavily taxed.
Those countries pay on the average close to 50% of their money out in taxes as a whole. Not just if you're in a certain income bracket, it goes up. No. They pay across the board a lot of their income, but they benefit from it. They have good roads, they have good schools, they have good medical care, they have daycares at their work and such. if my dollars were being spent that way, I'd be happy to fork over that 50%.
Well, we're close enough. I mean, they take about 38%, 40%. I mean, we're not that far.
but our 38 and 40% is going in our politicians' pockets. It's going into their healthcare system that is not the same as our healthcare system. So, but that's a whole nother conversation. We're not going to go there today.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because even Canada next door, and they do have, I would say, a little healthier system, although you still have to wait a long time and stuff. Now, you can always go pay private and get some stuff. But if it's costly enough, you're going to have to wait for procedures to happen. But even that, I mean, the taxes they pay in addition, it's higher than all. And that's the problem. It's always the people that are paying, but we have resources that can be, percentage wise given. Now, I'm being just, maybe pleasant about it and, saying that it's the right thing to do, but that's not reality of life. Unfortunately, that's not how the world works. But really, if we wanted to cure everything and have $0 given, paid to in healthcare, every government can do that. And people can challenge me. You can. I mean, you can take a percentage of your oil and just dedicate it to this stuff, and that's it. Make it part of your, expenses, whatever. So there is a way to do that. You can print extra dollars, for that healthcare, the way you bail, businesses, these days, and do it. I mean, there's many ways.
Right. It's like, why aren't we bailing out hospitals instead of businesses?
Well, I'll give you one. Well, that's right. Well, here's the thing. We have defense, contractors. They make trillions. Put a percentage of that or a special tax that is paying for the stuff. I mean, there's ways to do this. Now, I'm not a finance expert or an economic, or an economist, if you want to say it that way. But these are just basic, things that we all can come up with an idea of how we could be paid off. But we just choose not to because the system is not meant that way. You got to pay for things, right? And so it's just how it is. And it's sad, but this goes back, like, do we want to have more people to live, because where the population is overcrowding the world? All I can tell you is this, at least from the belief perspective, this world can't handle itself. And, we have natural disasters. We have a lot of stuff that happen. I'm believing that there is a reason for that. And sometimes people.
Yeah, and the more we mess with things, the more we tick off Mother Nature, and then she's going to level the playing field. So,
it's like habitat, right? Animals, are coordinated in the wild. They're somehow the habitat level is always limited. Now, all in the world that we live in, like, we have hunting season because we want to reduce some of that. But in reality, you don't even need that. They'll take care of themselves. It's in the savannah, and all these places, animals take care of business, and the weak is dead, and so on and so forth, and it's always going to get. So it's just the world can't. I mean, look, we had the pandemic, we closed for about 3 months. The ozone layer got better.
The ozone layer got better, and the animals came back to reclaim what was theirs.
Yeah, I mean, but that's amazing, isn't it? So listen, I mean, we can go into a whole emotional trip and a discussion about how the world should be, but it will be just fantasy, really, because the reality of things is completely opposite. If the world was run by its own, things will be a lot simpler. But humans intervene, and we kind of destroy it one way or the other. But anyways, listen, Doc, we've had a pretty long show today, but it was, I think, fun. I mean, it was awesome with having, Dr.
We were all over the map.
but it's a full circle, but it's all related, right?
Yes.
Here's the thing. Everything that happens in life affects health. Actually, I had the discussion with Doctor. Business affected, everything affected. So therefore, whatever we're talking about.
That's why we have the windmill healthy lifestyle paradigm, because every single thing affects you, every single thing.
Hey, listen, and whatever we do has an impact on our mental and physical health. So doesn't matter what you do, business does affect us the most. Most of us are stressed just because of work at business and financials and paying mortgage and this and that. And, we have ulcers, we have this, we lose hair, we do this, and it's happening. Like, what the hell's going on? Well, you're, fighting the fight, and so is it affecting your health? I mean, actually, I had a show with a doctor that we talked about how the business concept affects and has a toll on the healthcare system.
Oh, very much so. Very
because
much so.
because the lifestyle we have, the food we eat, all the stuff we do is actually a direct link to exactly how the healthcare system is taxed and unable to actually meet the needs, because it just you can only do so much. I mean, our behavior is what's driving that, and it's coming from our economy. It's coming from
absolutely.
So when you start like listening and kind of like opening up to this, like, God damn, this is like crazy. I mean, but it's the reality. I mean, it's amazing. It's
and
not
then
fake.
It's a head scratcher. It's like, okay, so how do we fix it?
Listen,
therein lies the question.
Listen, you and I, we can be talking for the next century. I don't think we're gonna have a solution. I mean, there are solutions. The world can come together. We can have peace. We can do things, but I don't know if it's convenient. It's not convenient. It doesn't work.
Well, you know what? I think that the answer is to focus on yourself, to make yourself the best person that you can be. And if everybody was making themselves the best that they could be, the world would be a lot better place. So I always say, and I've said it repeatedly, I'll say it again, you are your greatest asset. Invest in yourself. Invest in yourself.
Well, I guess with those words of wisdom, we've had almost 2 hours today, and it's a nice discussion. And listen, I guess the next one will have more of Dr. Tuscano. Listen, let's make Doctor come back, a few times, because I think we can have a few sessions with him, even if it's half hours to discuss different pieces of this. It will benefit a lot of people out there, because he is also a professor, and his approach is in the research. And so it's not just the guy that does the treatment. He's really on the back end of things, and he can see the visual of the future. He also teaches the next generation, so
absolutely
that will be a whole new opportunity. And then I guess the next time we'll have our celebrity guest.
J. Anthony Brown. We'll bring him on, and we will get his perspective on how humor has helped him to cope with his own diagnosis.
Well, yes, doctor, but also just for our audiences, this is like a quick promo here. He is actually, I mean, he's been on the Steve Harvey show. He started with Arsenio Hall. I mean, he's been all over the place, so
he is a funny guy.
He's a comedian, artist, singer, you name it. So just look out for the show. I mean, we were hoping to have him today, but things happen. It's a busy life, right? But we're entertaining you for now, but let's catch the next one, and I think we'll have a great time with our next guest, and many guests to come. So
we have some exciting guests in the lineups, and I think that you are going to enjoy these shows more and more and more, because we have some really interesting people coming in.
We're getting just started, right?
We are just getting started.
That's it.
So here we are. This is Chatters That Matters. Let's talk about it. I am your show host, Dr. Cheryl Bryant Bruce, MD, the celebrity doc, here with Hisham El-Amati, Hurricane H. And we hope that you will come back and join us again and again and again. Tell your friends. Hurricane is just absolutely wonderful in putting together these really nifty looking show promos, the little flashers and things going on. So watch your Instagram, watch your Facebook, watch whatever social media you're on, and you'll see these very beautiful pieces of artwork that will be announcing the shows that are coming up. I'm losing a dog overboard here. Don't you guys start. But you'll see those. They'll tell us which shows are coming forward. Share those when they come to you. Share them with your friends. Like them. Comment on them. We want this to be an audience participation kind of sport. So join us again, and we will be coming back at you. Chatters That Matters. Let's talk about it. See ya.
See you, everyone. Bye. We'll talk soon.